The clatter of hooves echoed through the dusty main street of Silver Creek as Naomi Jenkins clutched her weathered suitcase, feeling every bit as worn as the leather in her grip. The year was 1876, and the promise of a new beginning in the Arizona Territory had brought her to this remote frontier town, though the hope she'd carried for the past 300 miles had begun to wither like a wildflower in August heat. "This is it, miss," the stagecoach driver announced, tipping his hat before returning to his seat. "Silver Creek, not much to look at, but it's got its charms." Naomi surveyed the ramshackle buildings lining the street, her honey-brown eyes taking in the saloon, general store, and small church that constituted the town center. At 22, she had already endured more than most women twice her age: the loss of her parents to influenza, the betrayal of a fiancé who'd left her for another, and the whispers that followed her departure from Boston. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as she made her way toward the boarding house at the edge of town. Her light blue dress, once considered fashionable in the East, now seemed impractical and out of place among the practical garments worn by the few women she passed. Their curious glances made her quicken her pace. "You must be Miss Jenkins," a stern-faced woman greeted her at the boarding house door. "I'm Mrs. Hargrove. Your room is upstairs, first door on the right. Meals are at 7, noon, and 6. No gentlemen callers past 8, and absolutely no shenanigans under my roof." "Yes, madam," Naomi nodded, relieved to have reached her destination. "Thank you for accommodating me." Her room was sparse: a narrow bed, a wooden dresser with a cracked mirror, and a small writing desk beneath the window. It wasn't much, but it was hers, at least for now. Setting down her suitcase, she crossed to the window and gazed out at the expansive landscape beyond the town. The rugged beauty of the mountains in the distance contrasted sharply with the harshness of the desert floor. "This is home now," she whispered to herself, trying to find conviction in the words. The teaching position that had brought her west would begin in 3 days. Until then, she would need to acquaint herself with Silver Creek and its inhabitants. Taking a deep breath, she unpacked her few belongings, changed into her simplest dress, and headed downstairs to explore her new surroundings. The general store seemed the safest place to start. As she pushed open the door, the bell overhead announced her arrival, and several heads turned in her direction. The store owner, a portly man with a gray mustache, nodded in greeting. "Afternoon, miss. You must be the new schoolteacher we've been expecting." "Yes, sir." "Naomi Jenkins," she replied, extending her hand. "I arrived on today's stage. Walter Peterson," he shook her hand firmly. "Welcome to Silver Creek. Anything particular you're looking for today?" "Just familiarizing myself with what's available here," she explained, glancing around at the shelves stocked with canned goods, tools, fabrics, and sundries. "Well, we carry most necessities. Special orders take about 3 weeks from Denver. My wife runs the post office in the back if you're needing to send any letters." As Naomi browsed the store, she became aware of whispered conversations around her. Though she couldn't make out the words, the sidelong glances in her direction made her increasingly uncomfortable. She had hoped to escape the judgment she'd faced back east, but it seemed that even here, as a newcomer, she was subject to scrutiny. After purchasing a few small items, a notebook, pencils for her students, and some peppermint candies, she stepped back onto the boardwalk. The sun was beginning its descent, painting the mountains with hues of orange and purple. She was about to head back to the boarding house when the sound of angry voices from the nearby saloon caught her attention. The batwing doors burst open and a man stumbled backward onto the street, followed by another who towered over him menacingly. "You're a damn cheat, Flynn," the larger man bellowed, his face flushed with anger. "Nobody cheats Buck Thornton and lives to brag about it." The other man, presumably Flynn, straightened his posture despite his precarious position. "I don't cheat, Thornton. Never have. You're just a poor loser with an even poorer poker face." Naomi froze, uncertain whether to retreat or continue on her path. The confrontation was escalating quickly, and she had no desire to witness violence on her first day in town. Before Thornton could respond, another figure emerged from the saloon. Tall and broad-shouldered, he moved with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his own skin. His face was partially obscured by the brim of his Stetson, but Naomi could see the determined set of his jaw. "That's enough, Buck," the newcomer said, his voice calm but carrying an unmistakable note of authority. "You lost fair and square. Go home and sleep it off." "Stay out of this, Dawson," Thornton growled. "This ain't your fight." "It becomes my fight when you're disturbing the peace in broad daylight," the man called Dawson replied. "There's a lady present in case you hadn't noticed." All eyes turned to Naomi, who wished desperately she could disappear into the boardwalk beneath her feet. Thornton sneered at her before spitting into the dirt. "Fine," he muttered. "But this ain't over, Flynn." With a final glare, he stumbled off toward the livery stable. Flynn straightened his vest and nodded gratefully to his defender. "Much obliged, Finn. That could have gotten ugly." "Probably still will, knowing Buck," the man called Finn replied. He turned toward Naomi, removing his hat to reveal a face weathered by sun and wind, yet handsome in a rugged way. His eyes, a striking shade of blue, locked with hers. "My apologies, madam, not the finest welcome to our town. It's quite all right," she stammered, clutching her purchases to her chest. "No harm done." "You must be Miss Jenkins, the new teacher," he said, offering a slight bow. "Finn Dawson, County Sheriff. I hope Buck's display hasn't soured your impression of Silver Creek." "Not at all, Sheriff," she replied, finding her composure. "Every town has its characters, I suppose." A smile played at the corners of his mouth. "That it does, Miss Jenkins, that it does." He replaced his hat. "Allow me to escort you wherever you're headed, least I can do after that spectacle." "The boarding house, please," she said, accepting his offer with a nod. "I've had quite enough excitement for one day." As they walked together down the boardwalk, Naomi was acutely aware of the curious glances from townspeople. A woman walking with the sheriff would certainly fuel gossip, especially on her first day in town. "How long have you been sheriff, Mr. Dawson?" she asked, attempting polite conversation. "Going on 5 years now," he replied. "Came here after the war looking for someplace quieter than Texas. Turned out to be not quite as quiet as I'd hoped." There was a hint of humor in his voice. "You fought in the war?" she asked, glancing up at his profile. "Yes, madam." "Confederate cavalry," he said, a shadow crossing his features. "Not something I particularly care to remember." "I understand," she said softly. "Many things are best left in the past." Something in her tone made him look at her more closely. "Sounds like you might know something about that yourself, Miss Jenkins." She averted her gaze. "We all have our stories, Sheriff." They reached the boarding house steps and he stopped, studying her with those penetrating blue eyes. "That we do. Some are just more willing to share them than others." He tipped his hat. "Good evening, Miss Jenkins. Welcome to Silver Creek." "Thank you, Sheriff Dawson," she replied, "for the escort and the welcome." As she watched him stride away, Naomi couldn't help but feel a flutter of something she hadn't experienced in a long-time interest. But she quickly tamped it down. She had come west to start anew, to focus on her teaching, not to be distracted by a handsome sheriff with kind eyes. The following morning, Naomi rose early, eager to see the schoolhouse before classes began on Monday. After a simple breakfast of porridge and coffee at the boarding house, she made her way to the small building at the edge of town. The schoolhouse was a modest structure with a bell tower and a flagpole out front. Inside, rows of wooden desks faced a larger desk and blackboard at the front of the room. Bookshelves lined one wall, though they were sparsely filled. A pot-bellied stove stood in the corner for the colder months. As she was examining the room, the door opened behind her. She turned to find Sheriff Dawson standing in the doorway, hat in hand. "Good morning, Miss Jenkins," he greeted her. "Thought I might find you here." "Sheriff," she acknowledged, surprised. "Is something wrong?" "Not at all," he assured her. "Just thought you might like a proper tour of the town, given yesterday's interrupted introduction." Naomi hesitated. While the offer was tempting, she was wary of encouraging more gossip. "That's very kind, but I wouldn't want to take you away from your duties." "Sunday mornings are usually quiet," he said with a shrug. "Besides, it's part of my duty to make sure new residents feel welcome and know their way around." After a moment's consideration, she nodded. "Very well, Sheriff. A tour would be most helpful." They left the schoolhouse and began walking along the main street. Finn pointed out various establishments: the doctor's office, the blacksmith, the small newspaper office, and other businesses that formed the backbone of Silver Creek's economy. "The town's grown considerably in the past few years," he explained as they walked. "Silver Mine 15 miles north brings in steady work, and the railroad's supposed to reach us by next year." "It seems a pleasant enough place," Naomi observed. "Though I gather not everyone is pleased about having a new schoolteacher." Finn glanced at her sharply. "What makes you say that? The whispers, the stares," she replied with a slight shrug. "I'm not unaccustomed to them, Sheriff." His expression softened. "People talk, Miss Jenkins. It's the nature of small towns, but don't mistake curiosity for disapproval. We haven't had a proper teacher in nearly a year, and folks are just eager to know who'll be educating their children." They continued their tour, venturing beyond the main street to the residential areas where many of her future students lived. Finn introduced her to several families they encountered, each greeting her with varying degrees of warmth and interest. By midday, they had circled back to the center of town. "Thank you for the tour, Sheriff," Naomi said as they stood outside the general store. "It's been most informative." "My pleasure, Miss Jenkins," he replied. "Would you care to join me for lunch at the hotel restaurant? Their Sunday roast is quite good." The invitation surprised her. "I wouldn't want to impose." "No imposition at all," he insisted. "Consider it part of the welcome committee's duties." Despite her reservations, hunger won out. "Very well, thank you." The hotel restaurant was modest but clean, with white tablecloths and decent silverware. As the sheriff had predicted, several tables were occupied by townspeople enjoying their Sunday dinner. Their entrance drew curious glances, but Finn seemed oblivious to the attention as he led her to a table by the window. After they ordered roast beef with potatoes and greens, Finn leaned back in his chair, regarding her thoughtfully. "So, Miss Jenkins, what brings a Boston lady all the way to Arizona Territory to teach in a frontier town?" The directness of his question caught her off guard. "How did you know I'm from Boston?" A smile touched his lips. "Your accent gives you away. Plus, the town council mentioned it when they hired you, but you didn't answer my question." Naomi smoothed her napkin in her lap, buying time. "I wanted a change of scenery, the opportunity to make a difference in a place that truly needs education." "Noble reasons," he nodded, "but not the whole story, I'd wager." She met his gaze directly. "We've only just met, Sheriff. Some stories take time to tell." He inclined his head, accepting the boundary she'd set. "Fair enough, Miss Jenkins. We've all got chapters we keep to ourselves." Their food arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. As they ate, Naomi found herself relaxing in the sheriff's company. Despite his perceptiveness, or perhaps because of it, she felt a strange comfort in his presence. "Tell me about your students," she said, steering the conversation to safer ground. "What should I expect on Monday?" Finn described the children of Silver Creek, about 20 in all, ranging from 6 to 16 years of age. Some were from ranching families, others the children of miners or shopkeepers. A few came from the scattered homesteads outside town. "They're good kids, mostly," he said. "Bit wild at times, but eager to learn when given the chance. The Martin boys might give you some trouble, full of mischief, those two, but they mean well." As they finished their meal, Finn insisted on paying, waving away her protests. "Town's treat," he said firmly. "Can't have our new teacher going hungry her first week." They stepped outside into the afternoon sunshine. The street was quiet, most folks either at home or at church for the late service. "Thank you for lunch, Sheriff," Naomi said. "And for the tour, you've been most kind." "Finn," he corrected gently, When I'm not wearing the badge, I prefer Finn." She hesitated, then nodded. "Finn, then. Thank you. My pleasure, Miss Jenkins." His blue eyes held hers for a moment longer than necessary. "I hope you find what you're looking for here in Silver Creek." The sincerity in his voice touched something within her. "As do I, Finn, as do I." The first day of school arrived with clear skies and a cool morning breeze. Naomi had spent the previous day preparing lessons and organizing the schoolroom. Now, as she stood at the teacher's desk watching students file in, a mixture of excitement and nervousness fluttered in her stomach. The children regarded her with equal parts curiosity and wariness. She greeted each one with a warm smile, learning names and assigning seats. By the time the bell rang, 21 students occupied the desks before her. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I'm Miss Jenkins, your new teacher. I'm very pleased to meet each of you, and I look forward to our time together." The morning progressed smoothly as Naomi assessed her students' abilities and divided them into appropriate learning groups. The older students helped the younger ones, a practice she encouraged, and by lunchtime, she felt cautiously optimistic about her new position. As the children ate their packed lunches in the schoolyard, Naomi remained at her desk, reviewing her afternoon lessons. The sound of the door opening made her look up, expecting to see one of her students. Instead, Finn Dawson stood in the doorway holding a small basket. "Sheriff," she said, rising from her seat. "Is something wrong?" "No, no," he assured her, stepping inside. "Just thought you might appreciate some lunch. Mrs. Peterson at the general store mentioned you didn't stop by for provisions this morning." The thoughtful gesture caught her by surprise. "That's very kind of you." He set the basket on her desk. "Nothing fancy, just some bread, cheese, and apple pie." Mrs. Peterson insisted on including the pie. "Please thank her for me," Naomi said, genuinely touched. "And thank you for bringing it." Finn nodded, seeming almost shy. "How's the first day going?" "Better than I expected," she admitted. "The children are bright and mostly well-behaved." "Mostly?" He raised an eyebrow. She smiled. "The Martin boys did try to put a grasshopper in Sally Cooper's hair, but I caught them in time." Finn laughed, a warm, rich sound that transformed his features. "Told you they were mischievous." "Their father was the same way when we were boys." "You grew up here?" Naomi asked, surprised. "No, madam, Texas. But Jim Martin and I served together. He came out west after the war, wrote to me about Silver Creek when the sheriff position opened up." His expression grew more serious. "I owe him a lot. He helped me through some dark times." Something in his tone made Naomi wonder what those dark times entailed, but before she could respond, the school bell rang, signaling the end of lunch. Finn straightened, replacing his hat. "I should let you get back to your students." "Good luck with the afternoon, Miss Jenkins." "Thank you again, Sheriff," she said. As he turned to leave, she added, "Perhaps you might call me Naomi when I'm not in the classroom." He paused at the door, a slow smile spreading across his face. "I'd like that, Naomi." The days that followed fell into a pleasant rhythm. Naomi taught during the day, prepared lessons in the evenings, and gradually began to feel at home in Silver Creek. The initial wariness of the townspeople gave way to cautious acceptance as they saw her dedication to their children's education. Finn often found reasons to visit the schoolhouse, checking the roof before the rainy season, ensuring the wood supply for the stove was sufficient, delivering notices about town meetings. Each visit was brief, but left Naomi with a lingering warmth that persisted long after he departed. On Saturday afternoons, when school was not in session, he took to escorting her on walks around town or rides into the surrounding countryside. Though they maintained a respectable distance in public, these outings allowed them to converse more freely, sharing stories and observations about life in Silver Creek. Despite their growing friendship, Naomi kept certain parts of her past carefully guarded. The shame of her broken engagement, the rumors that had followed her, the real reason she had fled Boston, these were wounds still too raw to expose. One evening, about 3 weeks after her arrival, Naomi was returning to the boarding house after a late parent meeting when she encountered Mrs. Thornton, the wife of the man Finn had confronted that first day. The woman was emerging from the dressmaker's shop, a package tucked under her arm. "Miss Jenkins," Mrs. Thornton greeted her, her voice cool. "I understand my Abigail is doing well in your arithmetic lessons." "Yes, Mrs. Thornton," Naomi replied with a smile. "Abigail has a natural talent for numbers. You should be very proud." The woman nodded stiffly. "Indeed. Though I must say I'm concerned about certain influences in the classroom," Naomi frowned. "I'm not sure I understand, it's just that." Mrs. Thornton lowered her voice, glancing around to ensure they weren't overheard. "A woman in your position should be particularly careful about her associations, especially with men of questionable character." Heat rose in Naomi's cheeks. "If you're referring to Sheriff Dawson, I'm merely suggesting," Mrs. Thornton interrupted, "that a young, unmarried woman who has already fled one scandal might wish to avoid creating another." Naomi felt as though she'd been struck. "I don't know what you think you know about me, Mrs. Thornton, but word travels, Miss Jenkins, even from Boston. My sister resides there and writes frequently." The woman's smile was razor thin. "Being jilted at the altar by a man who claimed you were unsuitable is not something easily concealed, even 3,000 miles away." Shame and anger warred within Naomi. "My personal history has no bearing on my ability to teach your daughter, Mrs. Thornton." "Perhaps not," the woman conceded, "but it does raise questions about your judgment." "Good evening, Miss Jenkins." As Mrs. Thornton swept away, Naomi stood frozen on the boardwalk, her earlier contentment shattered. The past she had tried so desperately to escape had found her, even here. She hurried back to the boarding house, grateful that the dining room was empty when she arrived. She had no appetite for food or conversation. In her room, she sat on the edge of her bed, hands trembling as she recalled Mrs. Thornton's words. The humiliation of Edward's rejection came flooding back, his cruel assessment that she was too plain, too bookish, too independent-minded to make a suitable wife. The whispers that followed, suggesting there must be something wrong with her for a man to abandon her so publicly. The pitying glances from former friends, the speculation about what deficiency had driven him away. A knock at her door startled her from her painful reverie. "Miss Jenkins," Mrs. Hargrove's voice called. "Sheriff Dawson is downstairs asking to speak with you, says it's important." Naomi hastily wiped her eyes and smoothed her hair. "Please tell him I'll be down shortly." After composing herself as best she could, she descended the stairs to find Finn waiting in the small parlor. He rose when she entered, his expression concerned. "Naomi," he said, stepping toward her. "I apologize for calling so late, but Mrs. Cooper mentioned seeing you and Agatha Thornton having words. Said you looked upset afterward." The thoughtfulness of his concern nearly undid her hard-won composure. "It was nothing, Sheriff, just a misunderstanding." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Doesn't look like nothing. Your eyes are red." "It's not worth discussing," she insisted, turning away to hide her face. "Was there something you needed?" Finn was quiet for a moment. "I came to make sure you were all right," he finally said. "And to ask if you'd accompany me to the Founders' Day dance next Saturday." The unexpected invitation caught her off guard. "The dance?" "Yes, madam," he nodded. "It's a tradition here celebrating the town's founding with music, food, dancing. I'd be honored if you'd attend with me." Any other time, the invitation would have delighted her. But now, with Mrs. Thornton's words still stinging, Naomi hesitated. "I'm not sure that would be appropriate, Sheriff." Confusion flickered across his face. "Appropriate? It's a town celebration, Naomi. Most everyone attends." "Yes, but—" She struggled to articulate her concern without revealing too much. "People talk, Finn, about me, about us." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "Ah, and Agatha Thornton had something to say about that, did she?" Naomi looked away. "She knows things about my past in Boston. Things I'd rather not have become common knowledge here." "Whatever happened in Boston is just that, in the past," Finn said firmly. It has no bearing on who you are now or how folks here should treat you. It's not that simple, she whispered, meeting his gaze. Some mistakes follow you, no matter how far you run. Finn stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gray in his blue eyes. Naomi, we all have pasts, things we wish we'd done differently, but those things don't define us unless we let them. The gentleness in his voice threatened to crumble the walls she'd built around her heart. You don't understand, she said, shaking her head. You don't know what I killed men during the war, he interrupted quietly, not just in battle but after, hunting deserters. Following orders that sometimes I knew weren't right. His voice grew rough with emotion. I came west carrying that darkness, thinking I didn't deserve peace or happiness. It took me years to realize that the past is only as powerful as we allow it to be. The raw honesty of his confession stunned her. Finn. Whatever happened in Boston, he continued, whatever drove you here, it doesn't change who you are to me. A brave, intelligent woman who's making a difference in this town, a woman I've come to care for deeply. His words touched something broken inside her. Before she could respond, he took her hand in his touch gentle but sure. Come to the dance with me, Naomi. Let the town see us together. Let them see that I'm proud to be in your company. She searched his face, finding nothing but sincerity in his expression. Slowly, she nodded. All right, I'll go with you. His smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Thank you, I'll call for you at 6 on Saturday. After he left, Naomi returned to her room, her mind replaying their conversation. For the first time since arriving in Silver Creek, she allowed herself to consider the possibility that her past mistakes didn't have to dictate her future happiness. The week leading up to the dance passed in a blur of lessons and preparations. Naomi spent her evenings altering her best dress, a deep green silk that she'd brought from Boston but never worn in Silver Creek. Mrs. Hargrove, seeing her efforts, offered advice on the current Western styles, helping her modify the gown to be elegant yet appropriate for a frontier celebration. Saturday evening arrived clear and mild. Naomi dressed with particular care, arranging her chestnut hair in a simple but flattering style, with soft curls framing her face. When she descended the stairs at 6 o'clock, Mrs. Hargrove gave an approving nod. You look lovely, Miss Jenkins, the older woman said. Sheriff Dawson won't know what hit him. Finn arrived precisely on time, wearing a clean black suit that enhanced his broad shoulders and tall frame. His usually unruly dark hair was neatly combed, and he'd trimmed his beard. When he saw Naomi, he removed his hat, his expression one of undisguised admiration. Miss Jenkins, he said softly, you look beautiful. Naomi felt a blush warm her cheeks. Thank you, Sheriff, you look quite handsome yourself, he offered his arm. Shall we? The town hall had been transformed for the occasion. Paper lanterns hung from the rafters, casting a warm glow over the wooden floor cleared for dancing. Tables laden with food lined one wall, while a small band of local musicians tuned their instruments on a makeshift stage. Their entrance drew curious glances, but Finn guided her through the crowd with easy confidence, greeting townspeople as they went. He introduced her not as the schoolteacher but as Miss Naomi Jenkins, his tone conveying respect and admiration. As the evening progressed, Naomi found herself relaxing. They danced several times, Finn proving to be surprisingly graceful despite his imposing size. Between dances, they sampled the potluck dishes and conversed with various townspeople. Even Mrs. Thornton offered a stiff nod when they passed her table. After a particularly lively reel, Finn suggested they step outside for some air. The night was cool, stars scattered like diamond dust across the dark sky. They walked a short distance from the hall, the music fading to a pleasant background melody. Are you enjoying yourself? Finn asked, his voice low in the darkness. Yes, Naomi admitted. More than I expected to. Thank you for inviting me. My pleasure, he replied. After a moment's hesitation, he added, Naomi, there's something I've been wanting to ask you. The seriousness in his tone made her heart quicken. Yes. The day we met, you remember Buck Thornton making trouble outside the saloon, she nodded, surprised by the direction of the conversation. Well, I heard what you said to yourself later that evening when you were on the boarding house porch. His voice softened. You whispered, "No man wants me." I wasn't eavesdropping, mind you, I was just passing by, making my rounds. Naomi's face heated with embarrassment. That vulnerable moment had been meant for no one's ears but her own, a moment of weakness after Mrs. Thornton's cold reception and the memories it had stirred. I didn't mean to embarrass you, Finn continued quickly. But I've been thinking about those words ever since, about how wrong they are. He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. In the moonlight, his eyes were intensely blue, his expression earnest. The truth is, Naomi Jenkins, I've wanted you from the moment I saw you standing on that dusty street, looking so out of place and yet so determined. I've wanted to know your thoughts, your dreams, your past, everything that makes you who you are. Her breath caught in her throat. Finn. I know it hasn't been long, he acknowledged, but out here, life doesn't always give us the luxury of time. When you find someone worth holding on to, you have to be brave enough to reach for it. He released one of her hands to reach into his pocket, withdrawing a small object that glinted in the moonlight. A ring, simple but elegant, a small sapphire set in silver. This was my mother's, he explained. She gave it to me before she passed, told me to save it for the woman who made me want to be a better man. His voice grew husky with emotion. That's you, Naomi. You make me want to be better. Tears welled in her eyes as he continued. I don't know what happened in Boston, and you don't have to tell me unless you want to. All I know is that I love who you are now, your kindness, your courage, your dedication to those children. And I want to spend my life showing you that you are wanted, needed, cherished. He dropped to one knee, still holding her hand. Naomi Jenkins, will you marry me? The world seemed to stop around them. All the doubts and fears that had plagued her since Boston rose up like shadows, but they couldn't dim the light she saw in Finn's eyes, the sincerity, the devotion, the promise of a love she'd never thought she'd find. How can you be sure? She whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. You don't know everything about me. I know enough, he replied steadily. I know your heart, Naomi. The rest we can learn together. In that moment, the truth that had been building within her for weeks became undeniable. She loved this man, his strength, his gentleness, his understanding. Loved him in a way she had never loved Edward or anyone else. Yes, she said, her voice growing stronger with conviction. Yes, Finn Dawson, I will marry you. His smile was radiant as he slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and gathered her into his arms. His kiss was tender at first, then deepened with a passion that made her cling to him, all thoughts of propriety forgotten in the joy of the moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. When you whispered, "No man wants me," that day, I wished I could tell you then what I'm telling you now. I do. I want you, Naomi Jenkins. I do forever. They returned to the dance hand in hand, the new ring catching the lamplight. Word of their engagement spread quickly through the hall, prompting congratulations and, to Naomi's surprise, genuine good wishes from most of the townspeople. Later, as they danced the final waltz of the evening, Naomi felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The past that had driven her west no longer seemed like a burden but merely a path that had led her where she needed to be, in the arms of a man who saw her clearly and loved her completely. "What are you thinking?" Finn murmured as they moved across the floor. "That sometimes," she replied with a smile, "running away leads you exactly where you belong." He drew her closer, his blue eyes reflecting the love she felt in her own heart. "Welcome home, Naomi." And in that moment, with the music swelling around them and the promise of tomorrow in his embrace, Naomi knew that Silver Creek and Finn Dawson were indeed her home at last.